So thank you for the invitation. Again, very happy to be here today. I'm filling in with for my colleague Cristiano De Nobili, who is busy today, that is generally in charge of the coordination of the ESA Phylab Collaborative Innovation Network on the Paris-School side. So this is something that we manage in partnership with ESA. And to give you some context, we began this collaboration over 2 years ago now. And Paris-School, if you don't know us, we are a team of engineers, scientists, designers, and communicators that are passionate about education, research, and innovation, and particularly in artificial intelligence. So we provided here our expertise to help ESA identify talented individuals who share this same passion. And we love to invite them to participate in innovative collaboration through the ESA CAN community. And so I would like to talk about what the CAN is about. And at first, I'd like to say that this is very dynamic community that brings all transformative technologies to accelerate the future of observation. So if you're looking for research opportunities in emerging technologies for Earth observation, or if you want to join a growing global network of experts and find new collaborators to discover the emerging trends that are happening right now, and as well, you'd like to share some knowledge to develop groundbreaking Earth observation solutions, this is the right place to apply. And today we count like three main pillars of expertise that boost EO. We have AI, we have quantum, and we have computing technologies. And this brings a lot of emerging trends for Earth observation through the ESA Phylab. So there are two types of collaboration. The first is the visiting researcher collaboration, and the second is the visiting professor. Depending on the type of profile you would like to apply for, we invite you to be part of it, because it's a place where we foster collaboration with our fellows. It's open. You can follow everything we do, and especially things like today when we organize workshops, fight talks, and events. So to give you an idea, we would like to have 50 grants that are given for the next 12 months. And again, today we are here to promote it. So I'd like you to book on your agenda for the next fight talk on December 10. We'll have the chance to talk about AI-based downscaling of terrestrial water storage grids from simulated NGGM and MAGIC data. And we'll have other upcoming events for 2026. So if you'd like to follow us and also apply for opportunities for collaboration, we just here put 2 QR codes that you can scan. And otherwise, we will let in the chat all the information that you may need to apply for a collaboration and to follow the community. So thank you again, Ruben, for this invitation. I look forward to hear Mélisande's talk today, and thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Enzo. Then let's proceed to the sheet talk of today that will be given by Mélisande from Mila in Montreal. And she is going to present about her work on tree segmentation from aerial, so drone imagery. Go ahead, Mélisande. We're looking forward.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for the invitation. Yeah, it's really nice to be able to share some of the work I've been working on recently with you all. Yeah, so today I'm going to talk about a recent project that is about leveraging elevation data for tree crown distance segmentation and leveraging the SAM model to do it. And this is work that I've been doing with Arthur Wacknin, Etienne Liberté, Joshua Bengio, David Rolnick, and Hugo Larochelle, and that was recently accepted to NeurIPS this year. So yeah, I just want to start by saying that there's a model that I called balsam in this project, and this is in reference to the tree balsam fir, which is quite common in here in Quebec. Oh wait, this is not actually where I want to. Okay, great. Sorry about that. So yeah, I'm just going to introduce myself very briefly. I'm a PhD candidate in computer science at Mila and Université de Montréal here in Quebec. So this is like building where I spend a lot of my time in my PhD that I'm wrapping up now. But when I'm not in the lab, I really enjoy being outdoors and really try as much as possible to do field work when I can. So this is a picture from this year when I participated to moth monitoring field work. And one thing I really like doing also is drawing comics. And this is not a picture of me drawing comics, but close enough. So I think as researchers, we're always driven by a kind of sense of wonder and curiosity. And for me, there are two things that always bring those out. And these are the natural world and people's kindness. And so in my PhD, I've really tried to work with nice people on topics that I care about. So my research has focused on applications of machine learning and remote sensing for biodiversity. In particular, I've worked on species distribution modeling using satellite images and citizen science data. I work on tree monitoring using drone imagery, and that's what I'll talk about today. And recently, I've also gotten into applications in bioacoustics. So the paper for this project is out, but I thought it would be interesting to give some of the kind of behind the scenes and like the history of how this project came to be, because you can always read the paper, but you don't always get to hear all the story that went behind it. So this project on tree crown instant segmentation started with Etienne Liberté, who's a plant biologist here in Montreal at Université de Montréal. And this was motivated by Canada's 2 billion trees program, which aimed to plant 2 billion trees between 2021 and 2031 with like benefits, including capturing carbon, enhancing biodiversity, and supporting human well-being. Now, I have to say that 2 weeks ago, this 2 billion trees program was stopped, and any funding that was not allocated to the project already was rescinded. I think this should not be, understood as, tree planting is not important, but rather that there needs to be structures in place to make these kinds of programs more effective. And obviously, the funding was great for, I think, other priorities in the budget, I guess. But all that to say that the project was motivated because we wanted to address some of the critiques to nature-based solutions, which include the fact that oftentimes, well, especially in Quebec, because the climate's so harsh, when people plant trees, they will plant spruce. And so we end up with like monocultures that are not necessarily good for biodiversity. We also have a problem that might be a bit Canada specific, but oftentimes there can be situations where land to plant trees is actually land where Indigenous peoples and communities live, and this land is just taken from them, or they are not involved in the process of managing the trees that are planted. And then a major issue also with nature-based solutions is that there are currently no really good ways of monitoring the progress of such projects. So typically, there are a lot of projects that are funded by the carbon credit voluntary market, but then no one is actually there to check if the trees have grown or not. So this was the problem that we wanted to address. So currently, in the context of like plantations in Quebec, the way that people estimate carbon in trees is by using 3 different pieces of information. So you need the height, the diameter, breast height, and the tree species. And then there are allometric equations that can link these different attributes of the tree, and you get the carbon that is stored in a given tree. Now, what happens in practice is that if you're an organization that plants trees in Quebec, usually your process will be as follows. Every 10 years, you will send a team of people on the field to survey a small plot of the different plantations that you have, and then you extrapolate that to whatever surface you originally planted. And then you cut 30% of the carbon estimation because some trees might have died. Obviously, like the 30% is a little bit principled, but as you can imagine, it does not give a very accurate estimation of what has grown there. And so I've been in the field in these plantations, and sometimes we'd be told, okay, you should go there, and like there should be trees, and you arrive and everything has died. So yeah, this is a major limitation of tracking progress on these trees, and we also end up with a lot of like carbon credits that are fake. And the reason why this is actually hard is because measuring all these different attributes takes a lot of time and effort. So typically when we measure the diameter of breast height, so we use like, ribbon tape. This is actually not in Quebec, it's in Panama, but same process. And then to measure the height, we either use a laser if the trees are not too tall, well, which in the case of plantations was quite relevant, or like if the trees are very small, you also use a measuring tape. So the most annoying piece of information to get is the diameter of breast height. Fortunately, there have been like great advances in drone technologies, and now we can have like very, very high resolution imageries of plantations with drones. And this is helpful because ecologists have developed other kinds of equations that can link the tree crown surface area, the height, and the species to the carbon content instead of using the diameter of breast height. But there are, well, at the time when I started the project, there were no actual models that were very suited for doing tree crown instance segmentation on high resolution drone imagery. And so maybe you're familiar with this, but I'll just go over this very briefly. What is quite nice when you fly drones that you get multiple projects out of it. So typically in a drone flight, the drone will take overlapping images, and then with structure from motion, you can get a 3D point cloud, which if you project in 2D, you get the orthomosaic. So that's the RGB image. And you can also get the digital surface model, which gives you a sense of like the effulgence. So it's kind of like a depth map, but because you're from above, then it's a digital surface model. Now, yeah, of course, you could get like more products with drones, like you could capture more things than RGB, but getting RGB data is just the cheapest thing you can get, and you get the digital surface model for free on top of the orthomosaic. So when we started this project, we collected drone RGB and digital surface model imagery for plantations in Quebec. And the plantations are 10 years old. So the trees are relatively small and well spaced. If you look at the picture on the right, this is the kind of landscapes that we would have. And we took imagery at 0.5 centimeter per pixel resolution, and there were about like 8 different species that were in the different plantations we surveyed. And we collected data on about 20,000 trees. So I'm based in Montreal, and so we went up north here in Saguenay and a little bit south in Estrie to collect this data. And all the images were annotated manually. So we had like manual delineation of each individual tree crown, and did not do the annotation part, but I'm very grateful to the people who did. So what inspired us when we started this project was that at the time when we collected the data, the segment anything model came out. So it's this model that was developed by Meta that claimed to be able to segment anything based on prompts. And the demo was like super impressive when we tried it on our images initially, and we put good prompts. We thought, okay, that might be something to use. And the other thing was that when we looked at how biologists would delineate the individual tree crowns, we noticed that sometimes it would be quite difficult to distinguish the crown from the background, and that they would overlay the digital surface model to be able to delineate that. So with this in mind, our question was, okay, are these any useful for individual tree crown instance segmentation? So we wanted to investigate this task from two angles, like leveraging the segment anything model and seeing if like incorporating elevation data in the form of the DSM could improve the performance of the models. So just very briefly, to give some background on the segment anything model, it's, as I mentioned, a model that is meant to take as input an image and then segmentation prompts that are in the form of point boxes, masks, or even text data. And it has a encoder, decoder architecture where the image encoder is like much bigger than the mask decoder and the prompt encoder. The image encoder is like about 630 million parameters, and the mask decoder and prompt encoder is very lightweight. It's like just 4 million parameters. This segment anything model also came with a feature that allows for automatic prompting, because manual prompting is also time intensive. Imagine if like you have to click on like 20,000 trees, and this is just like a small portion of like all the plantations that are in Quebec. So so we wanted to also look into whether using SAM in the automatic mode could be helpful. The main limitation of SAM is that it is a segmentation model that works pretty well, but we also need to know the tree species in our case, because different trees will have different allometric equations. And then when we looked at what the automatic mode of SAM would do on our images, it just doesn't do so great. So this is like the examples of like the original image, the ground truth, and then the predictions of SAM. And it makes sense because like we don't really, give it any information on what it needs to segment. So sometimes it will work well, and then sometimes it would just like segment everything but the trees. It was not very possible to use this like completely out of the box. So the first intuitive thing, that we thought about doing was just, okay, we actually have the digital surface model, which gives us some information about like the elevation data. And if we find local maxima, then it should correspond somewhat to the top of the trees, and these could be good prompts to give to SAM. Then another model that we considered was, we can also just, since we have all this label data, we can train a mask RCNN, and then, get already our instances of tree crowns segmented and classified. Now, one thing that we could also do, because SAM's mask decoder can take as prompt masks and then supposedly refine them, we could also take the predictions that we have of the mask RCNN and give that as prompts to SAM. And then we can do the same like with adding the DSM as a fourth input channel to mask RCNN and train the model with that. So so then we had a first look at, what all that gave us. So as I mentioned, the SAM out of the box was really not great, even with prompts that were like the local maxima. Because if you just take, the local maximum in a given image, because the places where like plantations are not like flat grounds with like bare ground and like just the trees. It has like very, very tall herbaceous vegetation, and so we would end up with like prompts a bit everywhere. So that was not good. But then what we saw was, what was also interesting to see is that when we trained a masked CNN, it performed much better than actually giving the outputs of masked CNN as prompts to SAM. So SAM was not actually refining the masks better than the original ones. And I think one explanation for that is, okay, I don't know how well you can see, but the images are like extremely high resolution. But then when you actually project the 3D point cloud into 2D to get the orthomosaic, you have a lot of like visual artifacts. So for example, like there's one here, but I don't know how well you can see. And I think that would actually confuse Sam because it would like hyper focus on that and then would end up with very, very weird masks. But the interesting thing that was like quite, intuitive that we saw was that using the DSM as a fourth channel input to the masked CNN improved predictions. Okay, I should mention that there are different ways in which we evaluate the model. So one is like single class metrics like mean average precision and mean IUU. Single class just means that I consider everything as being a tree. And then multi-class is I actually take into account the different classes, and the weighted map is weighted by occurrences of each class. Okay, and so here I'm just showing a few examples of different predictions for the models that I just mentioned. So we have, the RGB image. This is like what the DSM looks like, and the ground truth. And so SAM automatic just does nonsense. SAM with DSM prompts is slightly better. As you can see, there are some trees out there, but because, in the non-tree regions, there are always like local maxima because like the vegetation was actually quite high. We end up with like the background being segmented as well. And then, masked CNN performs quite well. And then with the DSM, we can correct some of the errors of the model. Okay. And so after seeing that, SAM was not out of the box, was not performing so well, we still thought maybe there is some, maybe it doesn't work well out of the box, but we can adapt it in some way that is useful. And so it took inspiration from this model called RS Prompter that was developed to do instant segmentation on remote sensing images. And the idea of RS Prompter is to keep the image encoder and the mask encoder frozen, but to learn how to prompt the mask decoder based on your task of interest. So I think they had tried this on, I don't remember, aerial imagery, perhaps, but like way lower resolution than what we had, and for less fine-grained classes. But we thought it would be a good place to start. And because we still thought, after seeing that including the DSM was useful in masked CNN, we still thought, okay, maybe there are ways that we can actually integrate it in RS Prompter. And so to do so, I designed an additional branch where I add the DSM as input and encode it. It's like a convolution neural network module here, and pass this in the mask decoder as well. And so those in yellow are just the two parts that we train. So the DSM encoder and the prompt encoder. Okay, and this, sorry, this is not in the right order. But also, before we started investigating like SAM, we also thought of looking into like transformer-based like state-of-the-art architectures. But what we found was that masked deformer actually did not outperform masked CNN. And but that was actually, even though the models are like bigger and more complex, but that was actually in line with other research in forestry that had found like similar conclusions. Okay, but to go back to RS Prompter and Boltzmann, so what we found was that these methods actually outperformed all the other ones. And so that methods that learn to prompt SAM end to end, had the potential to outperform other baselines, even though SAM out of the box performed so poorly. And so here are some examples of predictions of RS prompter and balsam. And I have to say, those were just picked randomly, so that it's not like I picked the best prediction. As you can say, there are still some errors. But if you look at predictions of mask-Gaussian and balsam, we still see that because the SAM mask decoder is pretty good when you give it good prompts, the segmentations were a little bit more precise than what you would get from mask-Gaussian, for example. And then we did a little bit of more qualitative analysis of the results that we had. And it was very interesting to see that on this plantations data set, the errors were actually aligned with challenges that are known to ecologists. So in particular, one of the classes that was most confused with another was black spruce and white spruce. And that was actually nice to see that most of the errors came from that, because when you're on the ground and you try to distinguish these two species, the way I would do it with the ecologist would be by looking at the shape of the cones. And so that's not something that you can see from fluid imagery. And just to show a quick comparison of number of trainable parameters, RS prompter is bigger than mask-Gaussian, but balsam adding this DSM input was not so much more than RS prompter. And I'm just actually showing this to say that the reason why we did not fine-tune SAM completely, that could be the first thing that you think of, is because SAM is just much, much, much larger, and we just didn't have necessarily have the compute to do this. But even if we had in our institute, if you think about downstream, how maybe ecologists would use a model like that and training on their own data would just be unfeasible for them. Okay, so after seeing, that our hypothesis seemed to be confirmed on plantations, and that, both integrating elevation data in the form of the DSM and also, leveraging SAM in a way where we actually learn how to prompt it was useful for the task of tree crowns and segmentation. We thought about how can we extend that to other types of forests, and would that perform as well? And so we looked at two other data sets, one which is from the biology station in the Laurentians of University of Montreal, and it's a temperate forest area. So you see that the trees are much, much, much denser than in plantations, but it's still, the same kinds of trees. So lots of conifers and, also many broadleaf trees. But yeah, still the similar climate to some extent. And then we also looked into a data set of trees in tropical forests on Barro Colorado Island in Panama. And those are all data sets that are open source. But you can, I'll talk more about it, but you can already see that there are different challenges associated with each of these data sets. So in the plantations, the trees are very well separated. This is the DSM in the last row. And even if you just had the DSM, you would be able to segment the trees to some extent. But if we look at, the structure of the SBL, there are lots of overlapping crowns. And same goes for BCI. But as you can see in BCI, there's a little bit more like the crowns also overlap, but there's also more variability in like height structure of the forest. So the SBL had 18 classes, about the same number of tree crowns that we had in the plantations data set. But the imagery is like a little lower resolution. It's 1.9 centimeter per pixel. And what we found on this data set was like similar conclusions in the sense that ours, prompter, and balsam were the best performing methods. Now, one thing that we actually saw, but that kind of made sense with like how the DSM looks like, is that if you look, for example, at Mascar CNN, that whether that has the DSM as input versus not, you can see that actually adding the DSM does not necessarily bring an improvement. It doesn't like completely hurt the performance, but it's it doesn't help as much as in the plantations. But then if you look at the structure of forests, that kind of makes sense. On BCI, we had a different problem, which was that we had many classes, actually over 100 species with a very long tail distribution. And so we ended up predicting things at the family level. But even if you look at families, like you will see that long tail distribution too. So we had like 31 classes that we tried to predict, and imagery at like 4 centimeter per pixel resolution and about like 2,000 tree crowns. And the other thing that I should mention was that the DSM in that data set, because it was encoded in like uint8, it's 1 meter vertical resolution. So it's definitely not as fine as the other data sets. And what we found was that, including the DSM was, a little bit helpful, but definitely less obvious than on the plantations. But I think we still see that it was a little less unclear, which methods work best. But I think what this really says is that this task of instant segmentation in tropical forests is just really, really, really hard. And actually, on this data set, what we also saw was that a lot of annotations were incomplete. So, for example, this is like an example of predictions, and here is like the RGB image, and here's the ground truth. And so, there are gaps in the annotations. Okay, you can. It's like hard to tell, which model is best. You can clearly see that model, like SAM out of the box, really does not do well. So even if you train the Mascar CNN, it's still like much better. And then methods using RS prompter and balsam would sometimes be better at like classifying the different families. But yeah, there's still a lot of work to do in tropical forest. I already mentioned that. So the main takeaways from this was that methods learning to problem SAM end-to-end usually outperform the other methods or perform comparably. But at least, on the SBL and on the plantations data set, it was the case. And it performed like similarly on the BCI data set. Now, integrating the DSM can improve predictions, but challenges remain for classification in dense forests with many species. That being said, because the DSM is just a product that is available for free, basically it's there when you take your drone imagery, and if you process it into an orthomosaic, it doesn't cost a lot to just get the DSM out of it. Because it's from the same, point cloud that is used to generate the orthomosaic. I would advocate for people to actually release this project on top of the imagery, because it can help in some instances. And so there are many different research directions for this project. The there's always, all the things that are around improving the model. So you can have a better DSM encoder. You can improve the classification, evaluate the different models in a low data regime. So like seeing whether these different methods, have more of a comparative advantage as you have, less training data. But I think one interesting direction would actually be adding additional metadata and information from satellite, just because in the drone data that we have, we have RGB, but there is so much about that is contained in like spectral information, even if it's at a lower resolution. So I've seen, works where people were even able to predict some kind of tree species composition based on remote sensing time series from Sentinel-2. So these kinds of things like could actually be really helpful to improve the models, even though the resolutions are not fully aligned. I think that would give a good signal, but I haven't quite investigated that yet. And then to actually expand a little bit on the challenges that we encountered in tropical forests, I think this actually posed the question of why do we actually need tree crown instant segmentation in this context? It made sense for the context of plantations where, we work with like small organizations that have their plantations, they want to have a very accurate estimation of the carbon. But if you think about tropical forests, most of the like carbon in trees is actually in the tallest trees. So maybe if you just focus on that would actually already be very good. And one important thing that my collaborator is actually working on right now is, bringing those models to local communities and understanding what they actually want to monitor in these places. And so the conclusion, I already said it, but I believe that the release of the DSM data alongside orthomosaics is a really low-hanging fruit, and it is really helpful in some cases. And it doesn't cost anything to like put it out publicly alongside RGB images. And finally, I would say that this project was like very, very special for me in my PhD because I got to be part of like all the process from like the data collection on the ground to like developing the model and seeing it being deployed by ecologists as well. And so, yeah, it's important to do this in interdisciplinary collaborations. And so, if you can today, go outside and look at trees. That would be, I think something everyone should do in their lives. And this is just like a little comment I made for, just saying how I think in machine learning, oftentimes we devalue like data collection a little bit, but ultimately, I think that being out on the field really helped me understand like some of the challenges and understand, the images that I was looking at, and also, what I should not expect my model to do. So thank you so much. We have a little bit of time for questions, and you can always reach out to me at this email address. Thanks.
Nice. Very, very interesting. Thank you, Mélisande. Does anyone from the room at Philip or from the online audience have a question?
I have a question. So, when I was seeing your tree segmentation maps, it made me think a lot about biomedical data and nuclear segmentation, which has kind of the same problems. And you were talking about using a DEM, but I was wondering to help, have you looked at methods like that they use, which is basically not predicting pixel-wise classification, but pixel-wise regression based on the distance of the object you're trying to estimate. So you have a tree, where there's no trees, it's 0, but on the tree, it goes 1 for the layer on the side, 2, 3, 4, until you reach the center. And it allows you to differentiate the trees much better. Would that help?
Like, what do you mean? Like, what would like 1, 2, 3 correspond to?
Sorry, basically, No, sorry. It's basically it's changing the classification from a pixel-wise classification to a pixel-wise regression, where it's a distance-based. So the center of the tree is the maximum value.
You mean? Yeah.
Huh?
You mean to the center of the object?
To the center, yes.
Yeah. So I did not look into that. Okay, so somehow, my brain cannot disentangle this from the actual, like vertical structure of the tree. And I'm just wondering so sometimes, a tree will have like multiple local maxima actually in it. And so I'm wondering like how that would work, but that could be interesting to look into. I mean, this is like adjacent, but at some point I also thought about, not using the DSM as an input, but using that as like another auxiliary task. And I think that would be somewhat, related to what you're saying, where this time, we would kind of regress the vertical structure. And I could see how that's kind of related to.
I don't see it really combine it with the DSM, but I find it inverses the problem, because I guess the center of the tree you're much more confident, whereas on the borders you're less confident. So this actually accounts for that.
Yeah.
But then it has nothing to do with the topography. What I'm suggesting with the 3D. So there might be a smart way of combining them. But I was wondering if you had problems on delimiting single trees. This should help. But that's wondering.
I haven't looked into that, but that's really interesting. Yeah, I'll definitely check some of the methods out. Thanks.
I can send you a paper of mine in 2017 where I do that on cells.
Great. Awesome.
Nice. Then we had someone in the online audience, but I guess they left by now, asking whether you considered comparing to or integrating also LiDAR scanned from drones, understory or overstory. I don't know what that means.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that a question that I get often is that, of course, like with RGB drone imagery, you only get the canopy. You never get what's underneath. The thing is, and as I mentioned, we started this project in the context of plantation, so we did not have so much of an understory problem. And we did not use LiDAR just because it's more expensive to acquire. So, but I would say, I mean, yes, of course, if you have available LiDAR data at high resolution, I mean, I don't doubt that this, would actually be better than just RGB, but it's just the most portable thing. And I think my collaborator was also thinking in terms of deployment by ecologists themselves. You want like probably a good trade-off between cost and efficiency.
Yeah, of course, that makes sense. It's like an accessibility concern as well, especially if you're thinking about these local communities and what they might get from this. And then the same person had a follow-up question about the biomass data from the current, but the ESA mission, of which the data will hopefully soon be available.
I mean, okay, this is totally the next step, because this is also something we've been wondering, like, to what extent. I mean, sure, I think what really matters is actually getting the tree species, because this makes a huge difference in like the amount of carbon that you estimate. But then, whether you have, a little bit of, imprecision on the edges of your trees or not, maybe that really doesn't matter, to have this one needle in, especially because we work with like such high resolution. And this is definitely something we're working on to like actually just convert, all these metrics into what that represents in terms of the carbon that is stored. the reason why this hadn't happened yet is because there's a student who had been working on the allometric equations from tree crowns, and her paper is almost out, but not yet. So
great. That sounds interesting. Alberto, did you have a question?
Yeah, hello there. So I work for Pi School, and we're working with an agri-tech vendor in the UK. So basically, they have a model built by a university, and it is that this model could detect broccoli of a certain size and shape for the robot to harvest it, right? And when they took this model to production, basically it detected no broccoli. And now they're in a big trouble, of course. So we're trying to see how we can help them with improving this specific model. And I was wondering to what extent this project that you're describing could help with that, if there's anything that could be applied to that.
I mean, I think it depends on what the images look like of the broccoli. But when you said broccoli, I think it just made me think of the tropical forest, because I always told my collaborators it's really hard to distinguish, like everything looks like broccoli in these images. It's very difficult to distinguish between us. But as you saw, like if we're in very dense setups, which I'm not sure happens in like broccoli crops.
I think it's typically 3-4 rows in a line.
Yeah.
So it's kind of separated.
I mean, I think it might be like worth trying like some of the methods, like as long as, I mean, the other thing is that we used we were lucky to have all these ground truth crown annotations of masks. But something I didn't mention is that what we also did was like train a faster RCNN, which just gives boxes, and then like put this as input to SAM, and it was not the best baseline, but it was decent. So that was just to say that if you have limited resources in terms of like annotation, and you can only annotate boxes and not crowns, like it's not, you can already improve on whatever baselines are there for this task. So I think some of the things could be transferable perhaps to broccoli.
Cool. We'll connect with you I'm sure at a later stage. Thank you. Super interesting.
Great. Then there was another question in the chat. Whether you ever considered dead trees?
So
is that relevant also?
So in the SBL data set, there are some dead trees, but there are very few. So I wouldn't, be able to say like how that, I actually don't remember how that performed on the dead trees. But I think, at least in terms of classification, it did well because they were just so different from the other trees. And also the imagery that we took was like in September when like it's like peak different colors in Quebec. So if you have a dead tree, like it's just very different from the rest. But in terms of like detecting dead trees, like I did not look into like that specifically. So I wouldn't be quite sure, about how that scales on like data sets that are a bit more focused on that.
And I guess if you just account for alive trees in the carbon you count, you get most of the relevant carbon, right?
Yeah. That's totally for this application, yeah. But I think
for monitoring or
that's a great question. Actually, like some people in our group like are now working on detecting dead trees, especially in tropical forests, because like you want to study the mortality of very large trees. Because that's what will impact like most the local like carbon cycling.
Interesting. I have a personal question. How difficult is it to fly one of these drones and get like make the pictures and process them, gather them, and like do you need a drone pilot or something like that, or is it expensive also, one of these drones?
Yeah. So, okay. I think so. It depends on the kind of drones that you're using. Like I think for the plantation data set, like you need a license because the drone is like more than 200 grams. I think that's the limit. But they are like, I know the DJI-2 minis, they're really good drones. And they're like really inexpensive. It's like a couple $100, and anyone can fly them. It's actually fairly easy to fly the drones because we just program a mission. So all you have to do is like think by law, you're just supposed to keep an eye on like where the drone is going. But you don't have to think about navigation, about like getting the drone back. Also, I think in Quebec, it's not very much the case that you lose connection with the drone. That happened a bit in Panama, but I wasn't flying the drone. Yeah, but I think ultimately, it's just fairly easy. Like you just have like the software where you delineate, okay, this is the area that I want to survey, and like this is like how much overlap I want in the tiles, and just like do it for you. Yeah, so fairly easy, I would say.
Yeah, and then it also does in that program or another one, it automates the process of making this mosaic and everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. I was imagining something slightly more fun when flying the drone, but yeah, it makes sense that it's better to
you can also
pre-program
fly
it
manually. It's just I'm I shouldn't say it, but I'm not the best at like flying in a very stable way the drone. So
yeah, of course. Yeah, great. Does anyone else have a question, or are we going to wrap things up? In any case, you can, if Mélisande would be so kind to share the slides with us, then later on you will find her email address on there and you can contact her. Then we would really like to thank you very much for the super interesting talk. Yeah.
thank you so much for the invitation.
Wish you good luck on the end of on wrapping up your PhD, and enjoy San Diego to present the paper. I guess this was a good practice run.
Yeah, I mean, it will definitely be shorter at the conference. But I mean, I just this is my opportunity to show the pictures of field work. Otherwise, they just live nowhere.
Nice, yeah, they were super nice to see, for sure. I wonder what kind of field work we could do. It's a good
go to space
thinking exercise. Yeah. Okay, so thank you everyone for attending as well, both online and in person. And yeah, then we will make available the recording and the slides afterwards on the Gen channels. So have a nice day, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you.